Nice.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Sam, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Member Experience Manager at Advent Coworking. I want to thank you for joining us for our weekly event, Advent Member Talks. This event features a different member each week on the topic of their choosing. And it's a really great opportunity for our members to be able to share their skills and all of their knowledge and experience, not only with fellow members, but with the greater Charlotte community. So I'm really excited to be joined by Andy today. He's going to be talking to us about storytelling and podcasting and lots of stuff. So per usual, if you have any questions for him during the talk, please go ahead and comment those and we'll have a short Q&A at the end. So Andy, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you, Sam, for having me talk to the membership here at Advent. Thanks to Advent as a whole for just being an awesome co-working space. I've been a member now for over almost 2 years now, and there's no other co-working space that I would be at, particularly, because of things like this, because it feels like a community, because it feels like, we're not just people who pay a monthly fee here, but we really are a group of creatives, a group of entrepreneurs, people who are really doing things, getting stuff done, and I just really appreciate that about Advent. So my name is Andy Goh. I'm the owner and founder of GohJo Studios. My pronouns are he and him. And my talk today is going to be about the power of storytelling and ideas and the responsibility that comes with having a platform to express those ideas and those stories. So I want to just start off by telling you guys a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm an Advent member. I've been a member now for over 2 years, or almost 2 years, which is about how long I've had my small business going, which of course is GohJo Studios. You can check me out at gohjostudios.com. That's GohJo Studios.com. By the way, the name of my business is a little bit of a mix between my last name, Goh, G-O-H, and the word dojo, which is, of course, where you learn and study martial arts. So it's a place of learning. It's a place of respect. And that's really the kind of vibe that I'm trying to bring to my business here. But after about 4 years or so of working in digital marketing for local museums like the Beckler Museum of Modern Art and the McCall Center, I decided to go into podcasting full time on my own. I've actually been podcasting since 2014 or so, and never really thought of it as a business or a career, certainly up until the last couple of years, where the rise of podcasting as a medium for communication has really started to take off. And I've had some clients, some small clients, some projects that I've been working on here or there during that time. I kept picking up different projects and clients. I've also taught a class with Skill Pop for probably about 4 years now. But suffice to say, business grew while I was working my full-time job. And at the end of 2018, I had a chance to sit down and take a look at things and make the decision for myself whether or not I could go out and take the leap full time and be a business owner and do this work full time. Had a little bit of money in the bank, had some clients, had some good projections, hopefully, for where I could be. And I decided to take that leap. So January 1st of 2019 was my first official day as a full-time entrepreneur. And I've been going steady ever since. I've been really lucky that, I've been in business for almost 2 years, particularly this last year, because it's been a difficult year. But it's been a wonderful experience. And I really want to take this time well, first of all, let me just tell you a little bit more about what I do. But I work with clients of all shapes and sizes to bring their podcast ideas to life. So if you've got a podcast idea, or if your company's looking to use podcasting as a means of marketing, content marketing, then that's usually who I work with. A lot of people they have great ideas for a podcast, great stories they want to tell, but they want to get it out there. They don't know how to use a microphone or a mixer or whatever. That's where I step in and get things going for them. Also, before I go any further too, I do want to shout out my roommate here. His name is Gus. He's my 4-year-old red tick coonhound. He's a rescue. And I'm super proud of him. He's probably just going to be posted up like that during our entire chat, but feel free to say hi to Gus in the chat. So yeah, my chat here today is about the power of ideas and storytelling. And again, the responsibility that you have when you have a platform to express your storytelling and your ideas. Now, like I just said, podcasting is the the media that I work in. It's the medium that I trade in. But really, the real currency of what I do is ideas and storytelling, and that's at the heart of my business. Which is what I love about the work that I do, is that I deal with high-level ideas and stories and messages and things that people want to say. People expressing who they are. People giving their vision for what the world can be. That just drives me every morning when I wake up. I really enjoy the challenge of taking somebody's idea and putting it out there in a way that the world can hear about it. And so this idea of storytelling and ideas themselves is really central to what I do in my work. And so that's what the talk is going to be about today, is the power of those ideas and the sort of double-edged sword that they can represent too. It's not all good things for sure. There's definitely some things that you got to be conscious of when you tell your stories and ideas. So one of the ways that I kind of want to kick it off, just by giving a story that illustrates kind of my point, is something that happened way back in, over a century ago now, in 1914, a reading of the Orson Welles classic science fiction novel, War of the Worlds. Now, those of y'all who have studied media and communications and all that, y'all have probably heard about this. This was a radio reading of War of the Worlds that happened way back over a century ago, when all people had in their homes to entertain themselves was probably just an FM radio, AM radio, with maybe like 3 channels on it. So in essence, everybody was really listening to the same thing at that time, and everybody was sharing those same experiences. So one day they had a reading of this Orson Welles novel, War of the Worlds, which, for those of you not familiar, is a novel about aliens invading the Earth. And of course, when it was delivered, you're delivering it over the radio with just the human voice, literally just the human voice. So even less than what I'm using right now to communicate to you, just the human voice, no video, no nothing. So again, you got to keep in mind that the human voice is just a huge is really one of the most powerful tools we have. In fact, I'm not a physiologist and I can't explain how this exactly works, but your brain 24 hours a day is filtering out different stimuluses. So visual, audio, touch, sensation. Your brain is actually trying to filter out as much of that as possible so it can stay focused on whatever the task at hand is. Of course, thousands of years ago, that may have been, or hundreds of years ago, that may have been trying not to get eaten by a tiger, or something like that. But today, it's evolved into how we consume media and whatnot. So the human voice is actually one of the only things that your brain is actually looking for and actually trying to elevate above all that noise. So if you can use the human voice really well and effectively in your ideas and storytelling, that's actually all you need to be able to, really create some great effects and profound changes in your listeners. So again, back to War of the Worlds. People tuned into War of the Worlds, and it's a great presentation. First of all, the book is fantastic and amazing. The delivery is great. The narration, the voiceover. Well, it probably would have been called voiceover at the time, but the radio announcer reading it was just really, really well done. The only problem is that if you just tuned in the middle of the presentation, you might have thought that it was a news broadcast instead, because of course that's how a lot of people got their news back then, was through the radio. So this is actually what happened. People tuned in, they thought it was a news broadcast of what was going on, and they acted on it, right? They actually put what they were hearing just through the radio and through one person's voice into action. It caused mass chaos, panic in the streets, just a real breakdown of what was going on at the time. And again, I always like to go back to that story to illustrate that all three of the components that we're talking about here are in play, and it can have some real profound changes and effects on the people who listen to it. So I'm going to start off with talking about ideas and what ideas are, and how those are used in not only podcasting, but of course in our daily discourse. Ideas and storytelling are both things that we've been talking about or passing along to different people, different generations for as long as human history has existed. So obviously first it was cave drawings, and then it was, there was ink on paper, and then that evolved into newspapers, TV, radio, and of course now the internet. But at its core, those ideas and those stories have always remained the same. And it's just the medium that we use to tell them that has changed, that we need to update and be current on. So again, the real meat of whatever makes a great podcast, whatever makes a great movie, whatever makes a great radio show, speech, TV, book, it's all the same. It's all a powerful story or a powerful idea. It's just formatted for whatever that purpose is. A great quote that I like to use with ideas is from Oscar Wilde. He says that an idea that is not dangerous is unworthy of being called an idea at all. I'll repeat that one more time. An idea that is not dangerous is unworthy of being called an idea at all. So inherently, ideas actually go against the grain, right? They go against the status quo. To me, a really great idea is a vision of what could be that nobody else can see. And of course, great ideas have existed throughout human history. Aristotle's logic, Newton's theory of physics, Darwin's natural selection. These are all ideas that at the time they were formulated were completely unheard of in the status quo. And of course, met with ridicule and derision. And it was all because the greater masses couldn't see what the one person who came up with this idea could see. So not only was it an uphill challenge, but it was something that those idea makers had to be able to sell the greater humanity on in order to be able to get that idea to take hold. So an idea really isn't an idea if you put it out there and everybody's like, yeah, okay, we can get with that. Because again, an idea needs to challenge people. An idea needs to represent a vision of something that is not there, that maybe only you believe in. And I think that's a great point to think about for a lot of people who are probably watching this webinar or this Facebook live feed, because a lot of us are entrepreneurs. A lot of us have small business ideas. And something that I've found true the entire time I've been a small business owner, and I've seen this with everybody else I know who's a small business owner too, is that you have to really believe in yourself to an almost insane degree, an almost illogical degree. Because again, your business is a vision of something that only you have, that only you can make into reality. If you tell people about your idea, they're just going to be like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Keep talking, whatever. I'm just going to go through about my day. That's actually probably the sign of a pretty good idea, is when it gets dismissed pretty easily. Because again, that person, whoever you're telling it to, probably doesn't have that same vision that you have. So you really need to be able to convince people that is, something that they can hold on to. I want to also think about an idea in terms of production too. I'll reference Henry Ford when he was building an assembly line back in 1913. He said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? So again, Henry Ford, the founder of Ford Motor Company, the inventor of the assembly line, certainly his idea, his vision, his idea for the future completely shapes how humanity and modern society operates today. So I'll give you that quote again. And then again, this was Henry Ford in 1913. He had said, if I had asked the people what they'd wanted, they would have said faster horses. Now that speaks to exactly what I'm talking about here. Henry Ford in 1913 had an idea, a vision of the future that was so far beyond what anybody else could imagine that people just simply could not picture it. At the time, people were riding around on horses and in carriage, horse-drawn carriages and things like that. So nobody even knew what a car was, right? The internal combustion engine was not even a thing at that time. So if you had asked people what they wanted, they would have been like, well, I want a faster horse, or a horse that doesn't need to eat as much, or whatever the case may be, a longer living horse, a stronger horse. At the end of the day, even if they had those things, it would have been no match at all for what eventually came out of it in cars and the internal combustion engine. So Henry Ford, one of the greatest or most notable entrepreneurs of modern history, again, dealt with this same sort of thing. He had an idea, he had a vision, and he was able to push that idea through and end up changing history. That also makes me think, too, how many people throughout history have had ideas like the assembly line, have had ideas like physics, gravity, calculus, whatever the case may be. How many people have had those ideas, too, but they just didn't have the platform to put them out there, or they didn't have the communication skills to be able to tell them to other people and have them stick. So again, that's another part of the process that I really want to make sure that we're aware of, is that once you have your idea, you have your story, you also have a platform to be able to tell them from. And a quick aside, of course, that's another one of the reasons why I appreciate Advent Co-working for giving me this platform to talk about these things with you, the listener. So again, ideas are just this powerful thing that really exist in the ether when you first think about them, but they can have profound effects across individuals, groups of people, even societies at large. And that leads me to storytelling, because storytelling is really how we tell these ideas or these visions, or how we transfer culture and things from our history down to the next generation. And storytelling is really at the heart of what we do as podcasters, right? Or even, again, as book writers or movie directors or TV producers or whatever the case may be. Every great work of art has a profound story that it's trying to tell. So what makes a good story is really at the heart of the question here. And for that, I actually want to shout out a book that I've been reading called Out on the Wire, written by Jessica Abel. It's actually illustrated too. This whole book is illustrated with some really great illustrations, but it talks about it talks to some of the great storytellers of the new age of radio. So Alex Bloomberg or Ira Glass or Sarah Koenig, they all appear in this book. And if you're interested in podcasting or radio storytelling, I can't recommend this book enough. Again, it's called Out on the Wire by Jessica Abel. So in this book, one of the things that Jessica asks Alex Bloomberg is, what makes a good story? What do you look for when you're trying to find a good story? And his response is basically, he gives a formula that I want to give to you here. So his formula for determining a good story is this. He says, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then, whoa, you wouldn't believe it, but then this happened out of nowhere. And the reason why that is interesting to every single person on this planet is what? So let me go over that again. Again, this is Alex Bloomberg, a host from NPR, from This American Life, and of course the founder of Startup and the media company Gimlet, the podcast production company that just got bought by Spotify for $250 million last year. He says this is his equation for finding out what makes a good story. He says, this happened, and then this happened. Fill in the blanks, of course, for yourself. And then this happened, and then this happened. And the reason why all of this is interesting to every single person on Earth is this. So the real turn there, right? The first part of that equation is just talking about what happened, the who, the what, the why, the where, the when, the how. That's all over the place. I mean, we can look outside our window and find the who, what, why, where, when, anywhere that we want to. Where the real rubber meets the road is in asking yourself, what about this story? What about this sequence of events? What about this character, this person, and the change that they go through is interesting to every single person on this earth? So there's the key, according to Alex Bloomberg anyway. The key is in what is universal about this story. What can I identify with that, a child can identify with, that an elder can identify with, that a business owner can identify with, that their employees can identify with, that somebody rich can identify with, that somebody poor can identify with too. That's really what we're looking for here in a great story. What makes it universal? One of the examples that they give in the book is that it's real easy in journalism, radio storytelling, all that sort of stuff to look at homeless people as a lever for your storytelling. What about being homeless or having extreme poverty, is the story that a lot of people just don't understand. Well, it's easy to take anybody who's living on the streets or living without adequate housing. Certainly I'm thinking about all the people that are out on 12th Street right now in Uptown, and just talk about, okay, how did you get into this place? What happened? Why, what is your day-to-day life like, as opposed to when you have a roof over your head? That story is everywhere. That story is all over the place. And because it's all over the place, it doesn't necessarily make it stand out. And also, if you're somebody who's never had to live on the street, what are you going to find interesting about that necessarily? What can you relate to about it necessarily? Because I'll be honest, I can't relate to living out on the streets in a tent myself. But if you ask yourself, or if you find a person who, let's say, they went through something, they became homeless, they have a lack of adequate resources around them, and then they do something to get themselves out of that situation. They find a job, they find housing, they find somebody who's willing to help them out a little bit, and then they go through the work to create a new life for themselves. Now that they let's say that person now has a job, they make money, they make lots of money, they make maybe $100,000 or more a year. The story that they look for is, after they've made this journey, this transformation, what is interesting about it and what is universally applicable about it. Let's say that person reaches that milestone, they are self-sufficient and all that, but then they find themselves missing something about living on the streets. They find a simplicity is missing in their new life that they had before. But in order, of course, to be able to get to their new life, they had to sacrifice that simplicity, that sort of, visceral feeling. That is really what makes a great story. Why does that person miss this thing that they worked so hard to get rid of or to move beyond? Why is that something that still holds appeal? And then, of course, that idea, that thought of simplicity, or that thought of having, missing something about living without means, that's something that we can relate to. That's something that we can really wrap our minds around, no matter if we have money or not. That's really a great fertile ground for a good story. Now let's also talk about, Sam, I see you. Am I
Hi.
going long?
I just popped out of nowhere. Yeah, we just have about 5 minutes left, and we did get DM'd a few questions, so I want to make sure we have time for that. But please finish your thought, your sentence.
Sure. The last thing that I want to talk about here is how, when you have, and I'm sorry, guys, I am long-winded. I'm a podcaster. This is what happens. It's always easy to go long and then you have to edit down. But the last thing I want to talk about is the double-edged sword here. When you have a story or an idea, and you can make it universal, the responsibility there is that you when you have ideas that can take hold and spread throughout society, that you use it responsibly. Great ideas like, again, Aristotle's logic, Newton's physics, Darwin's theory of natural selection. These have all benefited society at large. But of course, you can take the same functions and the same ideas and turn them against humanity. The example that I would have given, or that I would have dove a little bit deeper into, is of course pre-Nazi Germany, where all of these same sort of functions were put into place to create harm and to create a worse world than what we have. It started with an idea. They made it universal. Joseph Goebbels and Mein Kampf and all those things made it universal. They made it accessible to people. And then people started seeing themselves in these ideas. And all the same functions that I just talked about that made these ideas great and changed society, they also worked against society in a way too. So if you do end up with a platform, and if you do end up with people listening to you and you have something to say, it's a real responsibility to make sure that you're saying something that is good and true and worthy of your platform. That's all I'll say, and I'll take some Q&As now.
No, I love that. That's like such a good point that, as someone who has a platform, you have a responsibility, to tell the truth and to be ethical and to be kind. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. And actually one of the questions we got was, are all ideas that challenge people good ideas? Which, I think you just answered that.
Right. They're absolutely not. I mean, if my idea is inherently harmful, I have all the potential in the world to take it and put it out there into the world. And if I can change one person's mind, then that person changes another person's mind, and it just spreads from there. I mean, it's just like the pandemic, right? It just takes one cluster here to spread it all across the world. There's so many parallels in what I'm talking about to what we're living through here today in 2020 that I could certainly fill up another 30 minutes of our member talk about that.
We'll bring you back for another member talk and we can get more into that.
Yes, let's get the sequel.
Right. So another question we have here is, have you ever had to work with a client who had a story you did not find interesting? And how did you handle that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I've worked with plenty of clients whose ideas may not hold a lot of interest to me, right? Like we're all our own humans and we all have our own interests, and not everything that everybody else has to say is going to be interesting to me personally or to you personally. The real trick in what I do for work is, how do I make that idea appealing to their intended audience, right? We're not trying to reach 300 million people in the US with our ideas when we're podcasting. That's just not going to happen. It's just, media is not really set up that way in 2020. We're very niche. We're very segmented. So really what I try to do with my clients is I try to tailor their work for their intended audience as much as possible. In fact, I really try to get my clients to be thinking about, who can they exclude from their audience? Who do they not want listening to their stuff? Because if you have a bunch of people consuming your stuff, but they don't really interact with it or interact with you, then you're not really doing your job. But if you only have a handful of audience members who are really interacting with your stuff and really, buying into what you have to say, and even spending money with your sponsors, that's always a good one to keep in mind. Then you're really doing your job. That's called the 1,000 loyal fans rule. It's better to have 1,000 loyal fans than 10,000, half engaged ones.
For sure. So we're here on time, but just last question.
Sure.
What is a local story that you've heard recently that's under the radar that would be worth listening to right now?
Oh gosh. One of the people that I did want to shout out when I was talking about how universal ideas can be, or how a good storyteller can make ideas universal, is a local writer here in Charlotte. His name is Michael Graff. He writes for Charlotte Agenda. He has written for Charlotte Magazine. He was actually once the editor of Charlotte Magazine. And he is an absolute master at taking these stories, whatever he turns his eye to, whether it be a football team or whether it be, the effects of the election on the community, and drawing out whatever makes that story universal. He is just a master at that, and absolutely one of the best examples I can think of, not only locally but around the country, of somebody who is able to identify those things in his subject matter and bring them to life. So I would say just check out Michael Graff's writing, and you can pick any story of his, and you will see and you will read something that, again, you may not know anything about it going in, but I promise you, you will take something from it that will change you as a person. So shout out Michael Graff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for so much great information. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today, and to everyone who's watching later. We always put up our Advent member talk videos on our YouTube channel, Advent Co-working Videos. You can also watch previous tech talks and triple threat panels. And we just finally uploaded a recording from our FF Level Up event that we did in September. So we're really excited about that. So definitely go check that out. And as you know, this is a weekly event. Every Tuesday features a different member on the topic of their choosing. So definitely join us next Tuesday as well at 4:30 here on Facebook Live. We actually have a new member, Josie, who's presenting, and she's going to be talking to us about discovering your political purpose. So definitely very relevant for the elections here. But thank you again so much, Andy, and I hope you all have a really great evening.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Bye.